So recently, I just watched a movie. It's a movie that once watched cannot be forgotten. A piece of cinema so weird that after consumption, it'll leave you second guessing if what you witnessed was even real, rather than the fever dream it presents itself as. Yeah, you read the title. Let's talk about Naked Lunch. The movie is a very loose adaptation of the book by the same name, written by William S. Burroughs. Much of what you see in the movie is based on not only the Naked Lunch book, but many of Burroughs' other works, including his own life story. However, in this video essay, I'm not going to go into the actual book or any of Burroughs' other written works in relation to the movie. This will only be my thoughts on the movie as it stands alone, though I will mention some of the parts based on Burroughs' life, because quite frankly, that's just kind of wild. To describe this movie would be like asking you what you dreamt of after you awoke. You can put together bits and pieces, but it's mostly just a blur of incoherency. You're not really sure what happened or why or even if it was real. The only thing really left are those feelings of longing and confusion and the thought of what you witnessed may have been important in some way. You just don't know how. Well, allow me to help put those pieces together for you. We start off with Bill. He has two friends and a wife. He's an exterminator by trade and an ex-addict. I use quotations because drugs are something he has definitely not left in the past. We first see him working a job and then re-upping on bug powder later that day. I know, more air quotes. That's because this bug powder is nothing more than another way to say heroin. At least that's what I believe. That's when the police nab him and shit starts to get really weird really quick. The cops grill him about the bug powder a bit and then pulls out literally the biggest fucking roach you've ever seen. And get this, the bug is telling Bill he's actually a secret agent and that he needs to kill his wife. To me, this isn't even the craziest part. It's all in how nonchalant Bill acts. It's like seeing a talking roach is just an everyday occurrence to this man. I mean, the bug tells him to rub the roach powder on its lips, and Bill tells him, sure, why not? Man, there's going with the flow, and then there's being sucked away by the fucking current. He's just too damn chill. After receiving his orders, Bill smashes the bug with his shoe and escapes the cops. The next day he sees a doctor about kicking the bug powder, and the doc gives him something to help. But get this, after he goes back home, he actually shoots his fucking wife. Like, what the fuck? He's played off as an accident, but goddamn, man, what in the hell were you thinking? I don't think it was because of the orders that the bug gave him either. He was just high off his ass and thought he could actually shoot the glass off her head. Crazy. This bit is actually interesting because the writer of the original book, William S. Burroughs, really does kill his wife in basically the same way. And much like the movie, he flees to the United States. The shooting took place in New Mexico, by the way. But instead of the U.S., Bill gets a ticket to Interzone. Not only that, but his wife's name is Joan too. Couple that with the protagonist and author sharing the same name as well, and you've got a loose biography. And by the events of the movie, boy, was Burroughs into some wild shit. That's basically all the story I can tell coherently. If you want to know more, you'll have to actually watch the movie. Now, for the weird bits, like these bugs and creatures that you see all throughout the movie. They range from roaches to these bipedal fish-looking things and whatever the fuck that is. They are grotesque to say the least. However, I do think that they each mean something. The roach bugs are literal plot devices that push the story along, but I think they also represent the lack of agency in Bill himself. The only thing Bill actually does for himself is go after Joan. On all other accounts, he is just kind of going with the flow of things. I think the bugs can be interpreted as a manifestation of what Bill actually wants at that moment, like the sex bug that appears when he and Joan go at it, or the fish-looking one that spews drugs when you type what it likes. Or Kiki and the centipede man thing in the bird cage. His predatory nature is seen in its entirety as he devours poor Kiki. Maybe there's something to be said about how Bill perceives gay sex. I mean, that guy was killing Kiki and would have done the same to Bill if he had given in to his advances. Not only that, but this is the one and only depiction of gay sex in the entire film. All the straight sex isn't shown like this. Not at all. I think the bug's orders are interesting when viewed in this light. Did Bill actually want to kill his wife? When the bug suggested he engage in homosexual acts, is that what Bill wanted all along? I mean, I could be wrong, but that's just one interpretation. Speaking of the gay shit in this movie, it's astronomical. I mean, there's just a whole lot of it, and that's kind of odd for a movie made in the 90s. Bill does try to stay away from it as best he can, though. The first time he's invited into a homosexual act was when his friend asked him to join in with his wife, to which Bill doesn't even say anything, just grabs what he needs and walks away. Then, in Interzone, the bug typewriter proposes Bill involve himself in homosexual acts as to keep himself deep undercover. Bill is not having any of that shit and walks out before the bug can even finish speaking. Nonetheless, the absolute gayness of Interzone is almost overwhelmingly abundant. Gay men flock the streets in droves, and it's these gay men, Kiki in particular, that get Bill close to Joan and her husband. In all outward accounts, Bill is gay to the people of Interzone. I mean, he fucking pulls up with a whole entourage of boys like they're supermodels or something. On the first day he's there, no less. He even gets complimented on his access to such fine young men by the very people he wants to get close to. At first, Bill's sexuality is very straightforward, no pun intended. He has a fucking wife for God's sakes. However, deeper into the movie, his homosexual tendencies come further into light, starting with Kiki asking him if he was a fag in the bar. Bill's answer is not no. In fact, it's very vague. He says that he's not one by nature, but under the right circumstances, well... He also has this monologue, one of the only two in the movie. He speaks about how he one day realizes that he is a homosexual. He looks upon the local drag queens in disgust and contemplates killing himself because he thought that is what he was, or rather, what he was destined to become, until another drag queen by the name of Bobo tells him to basically be who he is and not to hide it. At least that's what I got out of the monologue. It's really fucking hard to understand, to be honest. I'm not even sure if Bill is to be taken serious or if he's just fucking with the guy he's having dinner with. I do believe that Bill is at least bi, because he literally wakes up with Kiki. Just the way Bill embraces him in bed and kisses his forehead. That nigga gay. Although, it isn't entirely shown or spelled out to the audience. I really have no fucking clue what this movie is trying to say about homosexuality. On one hand, Bill is disgusted by the notion of it, and on the other hand, it seems like he's grappling with it, fighting it. Maybe it's this struggle of duality that the movie is trying to show us. I really don't know. Now, on to the most interesting part of the movie, at least for me. It's Bill's relationship with drugs and his writing. As Bill continues to write his reports, it seems that he has a knack for writing. His friends even come to Interzone to tell him that their publishers want to move forward with his book once he completes it. The book being called Naked Lunch, and Bill having no fucking clue that he's writing it, or that he mailed his manuscripts to his friends. Bill's relationship with his writing and drug abuse are very interesting, and honestly, what mostly stands out about the movie. There are just so many scenes when writing and drugs go hand in hand. Like when he is seducing Joan and has her write while they are eating that black jam drug. Or when Bill hands the broken pieces of his typewriter, which is also a smashed cockroach by the way, to his friends. And then when they open the bag, they only find various drugs inside. Or when he gets his new typewriter from Kiki and it leaks drugs when you're writing something that it likes. His writings are literally fueled by drugs. Drugs are probably the most constant thing in The Naked Lunch, besides the main character himself. It's at the very beginning of the movie all the way throughout until the end. There's a certain imprisonment effect of the constant uses of drugs. Much like in real life, Bill just can't seem to get away from them. Even when he decides to try and kick the bug powder, the doctor that helps him only prescribes a whole new drug to which Bill gets addicted to as well. There is no escaping the addiction, and honestly, there isn't any incentive to escape either. Bill writes his best when he's on drugs, and even better when he's hurting. This sentiment is felt by most that are in the artistic space. We think that we can't be funny or witty, or that we'll lose our edge if we aren't going through some kind of internal turmoil. That if we get help and become better, that we will somehow become less of the artists that we are. Bill certainly seems to think so. He says it himself, that he can't write without Joan. It seems that she is his muse, but in the most morbid of senses. It's his guilt of murdering her at the beginning of the movie that spurs him into becoming a great writer. At the end of the movie, he kills her again in an attempt to recapture those feelings and then transfer them into his writings, though I don't believe that he is experiencing the same feelings of guilt, or at least not in the same sense. Not only that, but he kills her again to prove to himself that he is in fact a writer, that he really is good enough. In the beginning, he felt guilty for murdering someone he loved. In the end, he felt guilty because he had to kill her in order to keep his pain going, and thus his writing's great. Now for some of the obvious questions that come to mind while watching the movie. Is Bill hallucinating? Honestly, I'm torn about this myself, and it's obvious the movie wants you to feel confused about this as well. I know there are a few times that he's definitely hallucinating, like when he gives the broken typewriter to his friends and it's just drugs, when he tries to show his friends the ticket to Interzone and it's drugs again, In fact, whenever Bill tries to actively show someone something that has come out of his hallucinations, it's replaced with drugs. Odd. Then there are times where it's ambiguous, like when Bill and Joan are having sex and the torso dick thing is flopping on top of them, and the housekeeper bats it away. It's not like the other people don't see the weird shit, it's just that they either don't react to it or don't react how they should. I just don't know. Is Enderzone even a real place? Again, I have no fucking clue. The movie alludes to it being somewhere separate from New York, like how he gets a ticket from the big monster creature, a plane ticket, but when Bill's friends show up, they take a bus back to New York. A bus? Interzone's supposed to be in fucking South Africa. Like, really? They themselves don't really believe that they are in this interzone. Honestly, they're acting like they just took the bus from the other side of town. But then all the people inside interzone refer to it as such. Not gonna lie, this is another mindfuck the movie tries throwing at us to keep us confused and second guessing if what we're really seeing is true. Not to mention, we are seeing this movie from the perspective of Bill, and he is far from a reliable narrator. Finally, what does it all mean? I think The Naked Lunch is an analogy about writers and their relationship with drugs. It's no secret that Bill is abusing drugs not only to cope with life, but as a means to better himself as well. It's sad, really, because by the end of the movie, we see him dive even deeper into his addiction. I also think there is a Ouroboros, a loop kind of thing going on with the movie as well, because by the end of it, we're back where we started. I think Bill was on his way to do it all over again in Annexia, find another Joan, do more drugs, write more, and then repeat. I don't think the ending of Naked Lunch is a happy one. Like I stated so many times before, I think this movie is more nightmare-esque in its appearance. The feeling of just being dropped into somewhere or some plot with little to no explanation is all over this film. It feels like a dream when you watch it and leaves you with the same amount of questions as you started. I think that's what's so intriguing about The Naked Lunch. It's a film that keeps you confused, asking, wondering. It's no wonder that it has become a cult classic today. Honestly, there's still a lot of shit I don't understand about this weird-ass movie, like the second monologue in the car, or why Joan's husband was speaking telepathically, or why Benway ended up becoming the mastermind of the whole drug operation. Didn't really understand that. All in all, Naked Lunch is a fantastic film, a great piece of art, at least in my opinion. And if this is your first exposure to it and you haven't seen the film, I highly recommend you go watch it. Maybe you'd enjoy it as much as I did.